So I've been shooting photo and video for a couple of years now, and one thing that people contemplate when they're getting a camera, or if they bought a camera already, is what lens they should get. I've had my fair share of lenses throughout the years that I've been shooting, and I just simplified it down to 2 lenses. So for context, I have 2 cameras that I mainly work with. I have Sony A7 IV and the Sony FX3. FX3 is what I'm shooting on right now. And yeah, so for the most part, these lenses are cheaper alternatives to the more expensive, like flagship versions. Not even flagship versions, but just the more expensive lenses in that lens class, if you will. So starting off, we have the holy grail of focal lengths, which is 24-70. For that, we have the Sigma 24-70 version 2 f2.8. So compared to the Sony 24-70 G Master, which is almost double the price of this lens, I feel like for half the price, it has a similar enough build quality. Sigma for me has always had great build quality, very sturdy, compared to like something like Tamron, which is what I started with, and that's why I switched over to this lens. Because Tamron felt like plasticky, this is more of a tank. It feels, you can tell it's built out of metal. It's more premium than Tamron. Compared to the version 1 of this lens, the Sigma lens, version 2 has more features. So one of the features is the aperture ring, which you can physically change the aperture on the lens, which I prefer. It's way easier than trying to figure out which buttons on the camera controls the aperture. Sometimes you'll hit something else, like you'll change the ISO when you meant to change the aperture. So just something nice to have. Then we also have 2 custom buttons. We have the lens lock, and I think it's the zoom lock, the aperture click. I like keeping it on click so you can physically feel when you switch the aperture. The filter thread size. I have a diffusion bloom filter on here. You can see that. The filter size is 82 millimeters, which is great because this is the largest size. So what I do is I get a large size, whether it's a bloom filter, UV filter, CPL, whatever. I try to get the large size so it fits on this lens and any other lens. If I upgrade to the Sony 24-70, that also has an 82 millimeter thread. For smaller lenses like this one, I just get a step-up ring and then use all of the 82 millimeter filters with the step-up ring. I don't really like getting like super technical in my videos with like the specs and everything, but this video is specifically about the camera lenses, so I kind of have to highlight some of the more important things that your everyday person might be looking into if they're getting these lenses. So originally when I got my Sony A7 IV, I got it with the kit lens. It was great, it did its job. From now on, I bought a Tamron 28-75. There was actually times where I needed that extra 4 millimeters to go down to 24 and I didn't have it. I would rather have those extra 4 millimeters than the 75 on the zoom in, because on the A7 IV specifically, you can do the 35 millimeter mode, which you can basically zoom in without losing any quality. And again, the Tamron to me felt like a little plasticky. That's just my opinion. From the Tamron, I was deciding between the Sony 24-70 G Master 2 and the Sigma 24-70 version 2. I ultimately landed on this one because it's half the price. I think it's like $1,000 cheaper. It's basically the same build quality and it has a lot of the same features. The reason I got the Sigma version 2 over the version 1 is, again, aperture ring, 2 custom buttons, and it's lighter. And yeah, I think 24-70 is the most versatile range for your lenses. You'll hear that a lot, especially if you look at videos like beginner lenses and stuff like that. It's great for both photo and video, in my opinion. To be honest, for photos, I don't really care to have like a super blurry background. As you can see right now, I'm on f2.8 and it's decent enough. Most of the time you don't shoot wide open anyway, especially if you're shooting during the daytime. I don't really care to have like a f1.2 or 1.8 lens. For portraits, I think this is great. Of course, prime lens like an 85 or a 50 would be more ideal for portraits, but again, this is multi-purpose, so you could do multiple things. Also, the Sony FX3 is great in low light, so I don't need that like f1.2 or 1.8 because I can shoot up to 12-800 ISO. I feel like that extra aperture isn't really going to help out with the FX3 anyway, so might as well get a more versatile lens because for the most part, those like f1.2s are usually prime lenses. The only thing I feel like I'm missing out with the Sigma lens is not having like the in-body stabilization that the Sony G Master would have, since it is a Sony lens. There's sometimes when I'm shooting handheld with the Sigma and it's kind of a little shaky, but for the most part, the Sigma has been great. Plus, a lot of my shots are static, like on a tripod, like right now anyway. So speaking of native Sony lenses, this is where the second lens comes in. My second lens of choice is the Sony 16-25 f2.8 G lens. Not a G Master, but it is the same G family. But again, it's still a native Sony lens, so stabilization is actually great with this. It's a fairly new lens that Sony dropped, I think, last year. And yes, I know 16-25 is like a weird like focal range, but this one ends at 25, and that's why the second lens is 24-70. So this is your wide lens, which I was shooting with this one first. I'm currently shooting with the Sigma, and this is on 24mm. I think I was shooting on 16 with this. So where this one cuts off, the Sigma picks up. So this lens is for a wider range. It's great for capturing environments because it has that wide angle. You can capture more in the frame. And it's great for vlogging because it's super lightweight. I don't know if you can see, but it's smaller than the size of my hand. This with the FX3 is like a super easy run and gun kind of setup. And yeah, it's good for like shooting in tight spaces too. Like when you're indoors, not enough space, you need that extra focal length to be wider. Especially in New York, a lot of the indoor spaces are very small. So it helps out to have like a 16mm. Like I mentioned before, this is an alternative to the Sony 16-35, which is double the price, and I think probably like double the size. Now the 16-35, it is a G Master and it has that extra reach to 35mm, so you don't have to constantly switch lenses. But I think you know when you need a certain focal length for certain shots. So for the months that I've had this, it got the job done for a lot of the projects that I've worked on. Of course, having that extra 10mm with the Sony 16-35 would be great, but it's pick your poison. It's pay more, heavier setup, or pay less, have some drawbacks, and have a lighter setup. So I just recently got back from my trip to Japan, and the only reason I was able to vlog so much and make an hour-long video, if you haven't checked it out, go check it out. But the only reason I was able to vlog as much as I did is because I had this small lens paired with the small body of the FX3, and it was super lightweight, easy to carry around. If I wanted to get some shots of somebody, it was super subtle. This lens is super small and portable, very lightweight. It's still a native Sony lens, so the quality is definitely up there. The lightweight of this lens makes it easy to shoot handheld, on a gimbal, run and gun, and just carrying it around in general. Or one of the drawbacks to this lens that I've noticed is whenever I'm shooting and the lens is facing the sun, I don't know if the sun is supposed to look like this on camera or not. It has a lot of flares on it. It looks fine to me, but I can tell it doesn't really look realistic. I don't know if that's a lens thing. If I could fix that with an ND filter, maybe not. If I want to get a crosswalk, if I want to get just a wide shot of the environment, it's super easy and lightweight. So again, that's one of the main reasons I picked up this lens, and it's been great so far. So that's my two lens setup, the Sigma 24-70 version 2 and the Sony 16-25 G lens.